Hello, everybody, and welcome in to Pass the Mic. This is a show that spotlights the accomplishments, the paths, the successes, and sometimes the struggles of women in sports and sports media. I'm Peggy Kusinski, host of season 2 here on Pass the Mic. And if you're a fan of the show, then please let us know by giving us the thumbs up. We love when everyone follows us and talks about some of our interviews that we've had of late. Don't forget, YouTube loves us. Thumbs up to you guys who are watching on YouTube. And we do have last season's episodes available as well with John Buffone and Alyssa Barbieri. Don't forget to check those out on the Barroom Network. Lots of great interviews from season 1. Great conversations, great time to binge it in the cold winter if you live in the Midwest. So Pass the Mic was created with a simple yet really important goal in mind, and that was to feature women in sports and sports media. We'd like to highlight their struggles along with their success. Through open and honest discussion and conversation, we feel that we can impact many women and men in and out of sports. Now, our guests do come from all over, not just the Chicagoland area, but they are nationwide, sometimes worldwide too. From veterans in an industry to newbies just getting started, everyone has a story to share. This week, we honor a woman who was a trailblazer for African American girls, Dianne Durham, the first national gymnastics champion who was Black. Bella Caroli's first national champion. Dianne passed away in February of 2021 at the age of 52. But her story is so inspirational that we wanted to honor the life that she lived. So we welcome in her husband, Tom Drahozal, joining Pass the Mic. Tom, thank you for joining Pass the Mic. I remember when I first met Dianne, and I was new in Chicago, had just returned home to Chicago, and I was working at Chicagoland Television when I first did a story on her, and that had to be in 1993, maybe. And I believe, was she running her own gym back then?
She had opened her own gym back then, so I think actually it was 1996.
96.
Yeah, it was shortly kind of with the whole Carrie Strug thing going on. It was right after the Olympics, because I remember being in the studio myself for that one. I was definitely behind the scenes while you guys were talking.
Well, Tom, I just wanted to, first of all, give you all of our condolences. And Dianne was such a beautiful woman. She was graceful. She was smart. She was very affable. Just a real pleasure to be around, not to mention one hell of an athlete. So tell me how you first met Dianne, this girl that grew up in Gary, Indiana, and just turned heads as as a gymnast.
Yeah. Okay. I met Dianne in 1992. She was doing professional gymnastic shows, but she was also a professional dancer. So she had been performing all over the world. She'd been in Germany. She'd been in Japan. She had just finished being in the closing ceremonies of the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona. And she had decided on the flight back from Barcelona that she was kind of tired of the whole audition and the kind of the nomadic life of being a professional dancer. And so she was going to go back and start coaching gymnastics again. And she decided to, come back to the Chicago area. She was living with her dad at first when she came back here, and then the plan was to move to Chicago. She was coaching at a gym in Chicago. And she was out one night, I was out one night, and we kind of ran into each other and talked. And then after that, we decided to, actually go out on a real date. and things took off from there. I know the whole thing is, we got engaged 6 months after we met, and married about a year and a half after that. I did not know about her gymnastics career when I first met her, and she did not share that information with me until we had dated for about 6 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is what's so amazing to me was that I told you that Dianne was graceful and beautiful and just a pleasure to be around. How in the world did this girl from Gary end up in the cutthroat world of gymnastics?
Well, gymnastics for her started when she was 3 years old. Her father's story is that her and her sister Alice were busy jumping on his furniture and tearing it up. So he told their mother at the time, Calvinita, said, you got to find something for them to do so they're not tearing up our furniture. And so the story goes as far as there was Wanda's gymnastics, and she was in Gary at the time. And Wanda Tomasi had a gymnastics studio, and they put her in recreation classes. And her and her sister both fast tracked to the team program. Now her sister's in 5'7", 5'8", is considerably taller than Dianne is, so she topped out at the team program quicker. And then when I've talked to her sister in the past, she always says, that she liked gymnastics. Dianne loved gymnastics.
Mm.
Dianne excelled quickly into the team program, and then Wanda moved her gym to Maryville. And Wanda got to the point where she told Dianne's parents, this girl has Olympic talent. I've taken her as far as I can take her. For her to reach her potential, she needs to go somewhere else. And so that's when Dianne moved to train with Bill Sands at that point. In the
That's
Chicago,
amazing.
Bill Sands would become Caroli's.
Right, Tom, that could not have been easy on her family to let their young teenager leave town, go in this world that everyone was just learning about back then. Not to mention financially, that is a very difficult thing on families.
Yeah, it was after she won junior championships in '81. That's when the decision was made to go train with the Carolis. And her dad. I read some articles, because her mom did a very good job of saving a lot of stuff. And when she finally did tell me about her gymnastics career, it was kind of strange because we were dating and she had told me at one point, well, hey, I can't go out this weekend. I'm going to be doing a gymnastics show. And I knew she was coaching, but I didn't connect it. And then she goes, I'm kind of looking at her. She must have, she goes, well, do you know who Bart Connor is? And it's like, well, yeah, I went to school in Oklahoma for 2. So I knew, and that was in the early 80s. I knew who Bart was. And she goes, it's his show. And I must have had a really perplexed look because then she goes, well, do you know who Mary Lou Retton and Bella Caroli are? And it's like, well, yeah. And she goes, he was my coach, she was my teammate. So now there was no cell phones, no computers, no Google. And so mind you, so this was on a weekend. So the following Monday, I get back to school and I'm looking her up on my computer and I was like, wow. I hadn't, and then, so then it was like, then I knew who Dianne Durham was as a gymnast.
So tell me about her relationship with Bella Caroli. She ended up being Bella's first national champion, which is really amazing. How did she get along with Bella?
Dianne has, I know Bella's got, there's people pros and cons on Bella. Dianne always felt that, Bella was tough, but she also felt like she would have never reached her potential without him. And she always said, to her, she said, he may not be the fit for every gymnast, but for her, she felt that was her best fit. And she said, she would have never been a national champion on the senior level without him being her coach. And her line to me always was, she knew what she was getting into when she went there. She compared it to somebody going to play basketball for Bobby Knight and complaining that it was hard. She's like, if Bella wasn't your fit, then go to another gym. But, for her, that was who she felt he was tough, he was demanding, and he held her to high standards, and he helped her reach her potential.
If people are wondering what gymnastics was like back then, now we're talking in the early 80s. Everyone remembers Olga Korbut and the young girls, but they were very graceful. And then the power tumbling really came in with Dianne and Mary Lou Retton. They really changed the sport of gymnastics, didn't they?
They sure did. And that's one of the things, like, I know when Bella wrote his own biography, several years ago, and that's what he said about how those two really changed gymnastics. And even I remember running into people, even 2 or 3 years ago, the way the code was written. Obviously, Simone Biles is a powerful gymnast as well. As they had said, if the code was the way it was now back in the 1980s, Dianne would have and Mary Lou would have excelled to even higher levels than what they did in the 1980s as well.
Wow, really amazing. Everyone remembers Mary Lou Retton. Of course, she was, marketed all over Wheaties, and she had so many different marketing deals. But she and Dianne were friends, weren't they? They were teammates.
They were teammates at Crowley's, and they were friends. I have heard from Mary Lou several times after Dianne has passed away as well. We did have a big celebration of life for Dianne in November. Because we had set that up, with COVID. Dianne passed away during the COVID period. Even though she didn't have it, it restricted what we could do to have a service for her. And Mary Lou was supposed to attend it, but Mary Lou had gotten ill like right before the celebration of life for Dianne. So she did send us something that could be read. And that's what Mary Lou did share with me, some stories about their little shenanigans in the Caroli's days when they were out at meets and, going out shopping. Dianne had told me some of those stories as well, like sneaking out to go to McDonald's and, coming back into the hotel, and Bella's, all of a sudden you see Bella coming in, and Paul Zert, who was Bart Connor's coach, directed Bella to a different direction. And then years later, Bella said, "Oh, I saw them. I saw them, but I didn't want to give them the reaction that they wanted." So, and he goes, "Luckily for them, they performed well." So,
Well, I want to tell our viewers what happened back in 1983-84. Dianne actually beat Mary Lou Retton at the '83 U.S. Championships.
Dianne has led the entire competition. She showed tremendous strength. She didn't let the pressure get to her. She hurt her foot and fought right through the competition. That's a champion.
Dianne Durham won 4 gold medals, folks. She won the all-around, beam, floor, and vault, and then she took a silver on the bars. That led up to the '84 Los Angeles Olympic Games. Tom, what happened that left her off the Olympic team when here she had just won 4 gold medals and a silver at the U.S. Championships?
yeah, and there was also a meet after that called the International Invitational that was held at Pauley Pavilion. And that was a test event for the Olympic Games in '84. And a lot of Eastern European countries that would later boycott the Olympics actually competed at that meet. And Dianne won that meet too. She won the all-around, and Mary Lou finished second. And Dianne injured a knee. Actually, there was a interesting story to that one too. Dianne said, and we watched the meet, and she said, that's when I hurt my knee, was on vault. So, but she finished the meet. She had enough adrenaline going. And Mary Lou broke her wrist on bars. And they both finished the meet. And then she said the next morning they woke up, and then Dianne's leg was puffed up. Her knee was puffed up. Mary Lou's wrist was puffed up. And then Bella's solution was, well, Mary Lou can't do anything because of her broken wrist. And he's, Dianne, you can do bars. Just go easy on your dismount. And Dianne told me when you watch the video of that, how she did, giant, because she kept thinking like, oh my God, I got to do my dismount. I can't, it's going to kill me when I land. And she did, and she actually, I think she finished first or second in bars in that meet. And then when they got back to Houston, they ended up going to their doctor, the Caroli's doctor there, and they came back, Dianne with a tendon damage in her knee, Mary Lou with a broken wrist. And she said when she went to, do therapy at the gym the next day, Bella was sitting in his office with the lights out in the dark. And because this was just, getting months before the Olympics, and here was his 2 stars were both injured. But they did recover. Dianne went to trials, yes. First day of trials, Dianne was sitting in, the top 6 were assured at least going to the Olympic training camp with a good shot of being on that team. And the compulsories, which were not Dianne's strong suit, I think she was in 4th or 5th place. She had moved up during optionals the next day. Vault was her next to last event. She under-rotated her vault and she landed short. She still scored a decent vault number. Dianne wouldn't tell you it was a good score, but it was a decent score. But she rolled her ankle on that, and she did sprained her ankle. And it did, obviously, with the sprained ankle, it swells up instantly. She had one event to go, and that was bars. And Dianne was told by some people at the meet, don't risk any further injury, Dianne. Hey, your record speaks for itself here. You will be, you will end up being on that Olympic training camp roster. And so Dianne scratched bars. Later, after the meet, it all comes out, well, since you didn't finish the meet, you cannot be, your scores were not enough. Now, here's the irony. If Dianne, by not competing on bars, Dianne was, I think it was 0.2 points away, 0.2 points away from being in the qualifier to go to the training camp. And she had said, if somebody had just told me that, she goes, I could have gone up there and done anything and, just dropped off and not a big dismount. My score would have carried me over.
Right.
That's where the whole, you hear all these different stories. I think it's kind of there's a lot of dominoes in this, really, as far as what all happened and transpired. Talking to Dianne, talking to some other people. Dianne was in the process of writing a book prior to her passing. And so Don Emmons is the writer for the book. We have, Dianne wishes were to finish the book. So we have followed up with some interviews of some people, and hopefully the book will be able to come out sometime later in 2022. But it goes into, Karolyi's, even Bella admitted, he came from a system where he was the head of the system in Romania, and basically, if I want you on the team, you're on the team. It doesn't matter what happens at a meet, if you finish it or not. He was in a communist type system. And he always said, he just did not understand, and he kind of was naive, thinking that this system was so rigid that how could you keep one of the best gymnasts in the country off the Olympic team? Because it would only hurt the country.
Right.
And then there's, an anti-Bella resentment was happening at the same time, because here's Bella, new on the scene from Romania. There was a lot of American coaches resentful, saying, hey, this guy's taking our thunder. He's not going to be the face of American gymnastics. What's wrong with us? Well, one of those individuals was the man, Don Peters, who was the Olympic team coach for '84. Well, by Don not being on that Olympic team, her spot went to somebody else, just so happened to be one of Don Peters' gymnasts.
So
Don Peters, is since, he had a big rivalry with Bella. Don Peters ended up later getting banned for life from USA Gymnastics for some inappropriate behavior. And then there's these meet officials that told Dianne, hey, finish the meet. At the end of the day, there's a lot of different things. USA Gymnastics, or USGF as it was known at the time, too, if they really wanted Dianne on that team, they could have said a mistake was made. Let's send her to the training camp and let's see if she earns her spot or not. But
wow. Wow, that is just something. So do you think, when you look at Mary Lou Retton after the '84 games in Los Angeles and the star that she became, that would have been Dianne. I mean, it absolutely, there was so many great chances for that to be Dianne. And instead, she went off and, like you were saying, she opened her own gym. She became a professional dancer. Do you think Dianne was ever angry at what she didn't get?
Oh, I think there was, when I met her, she didn't, she did talk to me about it early on in our relationship, but then, I got to know Paul Zert, who was Bart Connor's coach. He produced a lot of the professional shows Dianne was in. And Paul and I have talked, obviously, still to this day, back and forth. And Paul always told me, with Dianne, he goes, we didn't even bring up 1984 around Dianne for a long time because it was just hard feelings. And one of the shows that he did shortly before I met Dianne, it was an ice skating gymnastics show. They did a feature interview with her, and they showed her the '84 when she got hurt on vault. and Bob Costas did the interview, and that was the first time she had seen that tape since
Wow.
So she did, 2017, she got put in the Region 5 Hall of Fame, and she gave a speech where she said, I've come to terms with what has happened. I've forgiven all of those who have had a part, in what happened to me in '84 and with the Olympics not making the team and all that. It was time to move on. So she, as bitter a pill as it was, yes, definitely was. She would talk about it more. And like she said, you can't live in the past forever and think about what if, because the what if was not going to happen. That's for sure. And Dianne has said to me too, 1984, the first black gymnast on the scene, she always wondered, was America ready for a black gymnast to be on the Wheaties box? And she always wondered, did that have a hand in what happened or not too? Because there's a lot of different things. It could have been this, it could have been that, it could have been a combination of a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, I mean, she did not get her Olympic dream. And, like some of the '84 Olympic members have told me, like, we'll never know the real story.
Tom, do you think that she faced, and I mean, that was, you wonder if there was any racism involved in any of the decision making, but did she ever face more overt racism in her career?
Oh, yeah. She told me, like, she went to South Africa to compete, actually, 1980 or 81, the Sanlam Cup. And it was her first big international trip. Now, apartheid was going on. And her mom, she said, I remember my mom kept telling me, her mom sewed a special pocket inside of her warm up and told her, if you've got this on, make sure your passport's inside this at all times. And she was kind of thinking, like, she didn't really understand, the whole apartheid thing. She was at the point like 12 years old. And so her parents were kind of torn. Her dad did not want her to go to South Africa because of the political climate. Her mom said, if we don't let her do this trip, they'll probably never send on her big international trip again. So she did. She went on the international trip. When they got to South Africa, the leader of the U.S. delegation took all the team, and Dianne was the only black gymnast on that trip. They went to a movie theater. Well, South Africa had segregated movie theaters. So when they're at the movie theater, all of a sudden people are throwing popcorn and other things, in the direction of Dianne, and they're turning like, what's going on here? Well, then everybody kind of figured out, like, oh, this is a segregated theater, it's a problem. So the U.S. team got up as en masse and they walked out. And then she told me at the meet, when she was at the meet, she won the meet, and it was segregated seating. So blacks on one side, whites on the other side. And she said when they announced she won, to her, this was always kind of one of her bigger moments. She felt, the black crowd stood up and applauded. The white crowd did nothing at first. Then they did stand up and applaud. So she said, so for that one moment, at least in South Africa, they could put aside their prejudices to at least celebrate and acknowledge who won the meet. So she said for her, that kind of was like, for this, couple of minutes in time, it seemed like apartheid stopped, in South Africa. And the South African government did send a letter home to her, complimenting her on her accomplishments, and then, how she represented herself in her country when she was in their country competing.
Wow, that is really incredible to think that that was in the '80s. I mean, that just it was not very long ago.
No.
Now we have the best ever female gymnast is black with Simone Biles. Gabby Douglas was the first African American Olympic gymnast on the U.S. team. And that was just 10 years ago, Tom. Do you think that, considering Dianne did this and went through this 30 years prior, do you think that she ever got the credit that she deserved for opening these doors and paving the way for young black girls and African American gymnasts?
Well, I think she has, especially now that she's passed away. But Dominique Dawes has been very grateful in the past. I remember after Gabby Douglas won, Dominique Dawes was I think Good Morning America had her as their Olympic commentator about gymnastics in the morning. And Dominique Dawes, I think, I cannot remember if it was George Stephanopoulos or whoever made the comment to her, like, hey, this is because, you open the door for somebody like Gabby Douglas. And she goes, and I just so happened, and we've seen it since, but I just so happened I was home. It was on summer break, and I had gotten up, walked into the living room, turned the TV on, and I heard this conversation. And Dominique Dawes corrected the broadcaster and said, "No, that was not me. That's Dianne Durham." She goes, "Dianne Durham opened the door for black gymnasts." So I'm sitting there, I'm like, "Oh my God." Diane's in the other room. She goes, what's going on?" She thought, right? And I told her what happened, and Dianne was just like speechless. She didn't, she's like, and she's like, well, she just said, "I'm glad she said that." So
The depth of her contribution to the sport now is in the Hall of Fame. She is now recognized. It's unfortunate that it's posthumously after Dianne died last year. I'm hearing from you, though, is that her teammates always supported her. And were her teammates, did you hear from them after Dianne died?
oh yeah. Yeah, I heard, like I said, I heard from Mary Lou. I've heard from Kathy Johnson Clark, who was on the national team. I heard from Julianne McNamara, who was a teammate at Crowley's as well. Tracy Talavera has been, very, stayed in contact quite a bit. Her and Dianne were very good friends, even though they trained at different gyms. Pam Bialik, Michelle Dussert. I mean, they were all, that was the 84 women's team, plus some other national team members that were not on that Olympic team. And one thing with the gymnastics community is, they are a small, tight-knit group, but they remember each other. Wendy Hilliard is a rhythmic gymnast, was the first black woman gymnast as far as rhythmic, and she's been here. We had a huge celebration of life where Dianne Wendy came out. Four of the 6 members of the 84 women's Olympic team came out. Simone Biles, Gabby Douglas sent videos. Betty Okino sent a video. Bart Connor and Nadia Comaneci. I mean, Mike Jackie, who was the president of USGF, attended. Paul Zert, publisher of International Gymnast, he was there. I mean, it was a huge. USA Gymnastics sent 2 representatives as well, and they sent a video from the president. So I mean, yeah, Dianne, her place in the gymnastics community was respected by those in the community. As far as her peers, definitely, and the coaches from her time. She always felt, like there was times maybe she loved gymnastics more than the powers to be loved her. That's how she phrased it.
Tom, it's just such a beautiful tribute being able to talk about Dianne. What did we not know about her? Before I let you go, what did we not know? Because it's been really wonderful to see all the stories after she died. And I was so happy that she was getting the credit that she deserved. But what did we not know about Dianne that you want people to know about her?
Well, okay, I could tell you, I could tell you stories. I could tell you things. I can tell you one quick story. That 92 closing ceremonies, when she made it, she auditioned for that. She auditioned in Chicago. And when she auditioned for that performance, they took one dancer out of Chicago. And Dianne, now I had not met her yet. And she had told me later, she goes, when I auditioned for that, I'm thinking, I got to do something to really stick out, because to make myself the person they picked from Chicago. Now, she was wearing character shoes while she was auditioning. And Dianne decided there was the panel of judges that were picking the person there, or the producers, whatever, and they were at a table watching everybody perform. And Dianne said, in character shoes, she took off after she's doing her dance or anything, and she did she tumbled, she did a double over the table and stuck the landing behind the people. She said the room got bam silent, and there were still people to audition, but everybody's kind of thinking like, okay, this is a done deal. And so sure enough, when it was over, Dianne got picked from that. Now to do in character, now granted, Dianne was 24 at the time, and she had not competed for 7 years or 9 years. Still doing shows and stuff, but wearing character shoes, so the heels, inch so high. And so she did get picked. Now, a couple of years later, her and I were out to eat. We had seen a Cirque du Soleil show. She's wearing a Cirque jacket. And while we're waiting for our table, a woman comes up to her, and she was there with her spouse, and she says, "Hey, are you in Cirque du Soleil?" And Diane goes, "Well, no." And she goes, "But I've done professional dance." And they go back and forth, and she said, "I've performed in Japan and Germany and the United States, and then I did the Barcelona closing ceremonies." And the woman looks at her, and her mouth's like, "You're her." And Diane's kind of looking at her, and she goes, "You're the person that wore character shoes and that did the double over the table of the selection group." And Diane's like, "Well, yeah." I mean, she goes, like, "You're an urban legend in the Chicago dance community."
Oh, wow. I
So
love it.
what you know about Diane to me is, like, a lot of people that know her feel like she loved life. She loved gymnastics, but it's the biggest heart in the world. She would do anything. If there was a little kid off on the side, that's one of the things you'd always hear. From people that had come up, reached out to me after she passed away. She would make anybody feel comfortable, whether it's a person that's alone by themselves, at a gymnastics conference, and she'd always like, "Hey, why don't you join us?" That was always her. Or a kid that would come in there after she judged a meet. There'd be a group of kids that would always want to get her autograph, or they want to take a picture with her. And she would always make sure that she did her best to make sure everybody that wanted to talk to her or get a picture or something, she would always fulfill those requests. So she loved life and had a huge heart, and she loved gymnastics.
Tom, thank you so much for sharing Diane's story. Trailblazer, she broke a color barrier in women's gymnastics as the first on the U.S. national team, first woman of color. And we loved her. And we can't thank you enough for joining us on Pass the Mic to share her story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peggy. I enjoyed talking to you. And thank you, and take care.
You got it. Thank you. We'll be right back with the mic drop.
Are you still sleeping? How tall is the tallest tree? Where do crayons get their color? Do you understand me? How big can a bubble be? How high can I climb? How fast can I run? How long can we spin?
She should question everything.
Why do we have a bedtime?
But never herself. That's why there's Girls in the Game.
Are we there yet? Where does water come from?
Helping young girls turn why
What are clouds made of?
into why not.
Now to the mic drop. Wow. If you did not know Dianne Durham's name before, I hope you know it now. And I hope you remember it. People would always say that I was a trailblazer in Chicago sportscasting for women, but I was not the trailblazer. That was Jeannie Morris. And I am always grateful when people like Dominique Dawes give credit where credit is due to the true trailblazers, not just breaking barriers as a woman, but breaking the color barrier in USA Gymnastics as the first African American on the national team. Bella Caroli's first national champion, Dianne Durham out of Gary, Indiana, and Chicago's own, because Gary's like one of our suburbs, right? Dianne lived in Chicago. She ran a gym in Chicago. Her imprint was all over Chicago, and it's just unfortunate that it took her passing in 2021 for so many people to learn about Dianne Durham. But I'm glad that you did get to know Dianne Durham. I am sad to hear the stories that she went through when competing in South Africa. But I am so glad to hear that in the end, it was team that came together, her teammates, Mary Lou Retton, and the rest of that 84 national team. They always were at her side, and they were there after she passed away as well. Gymnastics is a tight community, and they have persevered through some very difficult times. But there is something about gymnasts, man. They are some tough, tough athletes. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode. If you liked this episode of Pass the Mic, please click the thumbs up, go back and watch some of the other episodes as well. You can follow me on social media on Twitter at Peggy Kusinski or Facebook, Peggy Kusinski, NBC Chicago. And I am on Instagram as well at NBC Peggy. Now, this is not the only show that I host. There is also my podcast that I do with my son. It's called Chicago's Sportscaster and Her Son, also here on YouTube and the Barroom Network on Podbean, SoundCloud, Apple, wherever you get your audio, you will find my other podcasts as well. Please check it out. I would love to see you subscribe as well. Subscribe to both shows. Why not? My thanks to our guest, Tom Drahozal, who is the husband of the late Dianne Durham, who broke the color barrier in USA gymnastics for women's gymnasts on the U.S. national team. Thanks to my producer, Aldo Gandia. Always makes me look so good. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun season here on Pass the Mic. We'll see you next time. So long.